Welcome back. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Mondays through Fridays, you can hear me on the Salem Radio Network from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. But Saturday morning, I'm right here on MSNBC, joined this morning by Capitol Hill reporter Seung Kim. And we had Tim Alberta, but I think the flu got him, honestly. And NBC's national security correspondent, Courtney Kube. Let me go back to you, Seung, for a minute. In 2013, Ted Cruz became the face of the shutdown. And a lot of people thought it was going to ruin his career. Actually, cruising to re-elect in Texas right now. He ran for president. He got down to the final four. Does Chuck Schumer become the face of this? And did he get punked by Donald Trump yesterday, who brought him down to the White House for the big showdown, and then he walked out of there branded as the guy who shut the government down?
Clearly, Republicans are trying to make Schumer the face of the shutdown with comments from the White House, from Republican lawmakers calling this the Schumer shutdown. Democrats are trying to turn that right back at Republicans and saying this is the Trump shutdown. He has never given us a clear direction of what he wants. He controls Washington. He cannot get bills passed. But it's interesting, we raised the 2013 impact. I mean, there was a lot of concern among Republicans at the time that the 16-day shutdown would severely damage the Republicans' prospects electorally in the 2014 midterms. We saw that was far from the case. Republicans picked up 9 seats in the Senate, took control of the chamber. Mitch McConnell became majority leader. So it's hard to see the political impact of this over time. But in the immediate future, that's what we're seeing so much of right now, making sure who gets the blame game in the public side and the media. And that, ultimately may determine who caves or who gives in a little bit to get the government to reopen again.
Now, Courtney Kube, I want to make sure that people know we know what's being shut down. People aren't getting paid in the military, but the military is still on the wall, and the Air Force is still flying, and the Navy is still sailing. Can you reassure us that actually the essential operations of the Pentagon are ongoing, despite the fact that the Senate can't get its act together?
The essential operations are ongoing. So that includes security, counterterror, those troops that are overseas that are deployed in harm's way. And so one thing that we will see, if this is to continue on for a matter of days or longer, Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, he's a retired general. If there's anyone who's going to continue to make sure that the war fighter, the individuals who are forward deployed, that they get everything they need, it's Jim Mattis. I feel very confident of that. But where we will see this back home and other places overseas as well, not necessarily in a combat zone, but this means that training is canceled. This means that maintenance can be canceled if you have civilian maintainers. It's sort of what the military calls the second and third order effects here that will have the impact. But those individuals who are forward, who are in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, who are in combat zones, in Africa, they will continue, Secretary Mattis and the military will continue to make sure that those are the ones who have the prioritized, assets and resources that they need so that they continue to fight and they can continue to be as safe as possible.
Now, Courtney, were it not for the failure of the Senate to keep the government open last night, we would be talking about the CIA having the biggest mole within it since probably the Walker case, and the FBI biggest compromise since the Hansen case. There is a huge spy problem at the CIA, and not just our PRC agents compromised. Apparently, our agents in Russia were also compromised. Does the shutdown in any way affect that counterintelligence effort, or by extension, the Mueller investigation and the Russia investigation? Does anything get shut down on the national security side?
No. Well, so yes and no. Those efforts will all continue. Now, there are some support staff that may not be reporting to work on Monday, but the main lines of effort will continue. So it actually is, it's very subjective who's considered essential and who's not. But if a commander in the military or if some sort of a supervisor in the intelligence services, if they deem that the individuals on their team are essential for national security, for continuing counterintelligence or counterterror or anything, even security, on a civilian side, TSA will continue. If the support staff are also deemed essential to continue to support the individuals who are fulfilling those missions, they will continue to be at work. But again, it's more sort of the second and third order effects of that. So let's say, for instance, you're serving in Qatar, and you need some sort of parts for an aircraft that are flying over Syria. Well, and those parts are coming from the U.S., but it's civilians who are the ones who send those parts, there may be some sort of a delay. So while the individuals who are actually fulfilling those jobs will continue to be on the job, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not necessarily getting paid, but while they will continue to be on the job, some of the things that they will need to fulfill that job may be delayed. That's where we really see, one of those impacts.
The president has been tweeting this morning, and he is not at all upset that the government is shut down. He thinks he's tagged Schumer with the shutdown, and he said he is not going to negotiate on DACA, even though there's an obvious deal that 80% of the country agrees with, that the DACA recipients stay. They don't get to bring in family migration. Everything's actually been negotiated, but the president will not be pushed into a corner, he said. So what is the exit strategy? How long is this going to go on, and who is calculating they're benefiting right now?
I think this will, that's kind of why you start to see the agreements of, or the outlines of this agreement late last night and early this morning on the Senate floor as that exit strategy. It's far from clear whether House Republicans and House Democrats would go along with it, and that's a question we're going to be asking lawmakers later this morning. But I think the fact that the president says he will not negotiate on DACA, and there seems to be a little bit more, needs to be a little bit more clarity on that. Does that mean in the context of this bill or whatnot? But I think that's why you were hearing from senators last night that they were ready to go ahead and have a vote on some sort of immigration legislation, see what can get 60 votes, let the House work its will, and present it to the president. Even Mitch McConnell said earlier this week, basically, we kind of need to know what the president will sign, and they haven't sent those signs yet. But in the meanwhile, I think everyone is just kind of waiting to see what the public perception is once they realize the effects of a government shutdown.
Let me get to Mike Viqueira on Capitol Hill for the latest. Mike, thanks for joining us on short notice. A, how do we get out of this? And B, are the Democrats who are for president who aren't in the government, like Jay Inslee in Washington State and Mayor Garcetti in Los Angeles, are they happy that Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren jumped off the cliff?
I don't know. I think this is a no-brainer for a lot of Democrats to vote against proceeding on this bill, as most of them did, except for the 5 who happen to inhabit red states and happen to be up for re-election later this year. Claire McCaskill and Joe Donnelly, Joe Manchin, and those members. Heidi Heitkamp was another. I think one of the most interesting and instructive cases when it comes to the politics of this is John Tester in Montana. Here's Montana, as deep a red state as there's going to be. John Tester up for re-election this year. He is a Democrat. He's been here, I think this will be his 3rd term if he is re-elected. He is sticking with the Democrats. He's sticking with the base. And I think the calculation is, look, no matter what I do, no matter how I vote, Republicans, conservatives, they're going to put somebody up against me that's going to be make a strong appeal to base voters in Montana. I stand absolutely no chance of winning them over, even if I voted with Republicans on this measure last night. He did not. He voted with the Democratic leadership, unlike many of those colleagues I just mentioned from red states, Democrats from red states. I think John Tester and others look at this and they say all of the energy is on the side of those on the left, the far left of the spectrum in the Democratic Party. I'm going to stick with them. They are my best prospects. So that's how the politics are playing out here on sort of a micro level, Hugh.
Thank you, Mike, for capturing exactly at the bases captured the Democratic Senate, and they won the day. Thank you, Seung and Courtney, Kube. Thank you, Mike. I'll be right back.